From NBC News in Washington, this is Meet the Press with David Gregory.
This Sunday, giving thanks and giving back. As we take a break from the rough and tumble world of politics here in Washington, we sit down with three very well-known Americans who are blessed with good fortune and who are using those fortunes to help those with far less. His purpose-driven life has sold more copies than any other book in history other than the Bible, and he leads one of America's largest congregations at his Saddleback Church in California. Pastor Rick Warren joins us for an exclusive discussion of faith and charity. Then, he's the world's richest man, founder of computer giant Microsoft. Together with his wife, Melinda, Bill Gates also runs the largest private charitable foundation in the world. They're here exclusively to discuss their mission to improve global health and education. But first, our focus on giving thanks and helping others during a tumultuous period in our country, economically and politically. With us, pastor, best-selling author, and no stranger to Washington, Rick Warren. Pastor Rick Warren, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Good to be back. Thank you.
And I will call you Pastor Rick.
Yeah, just call me Rick. Just call me for dinner.
What is testing the faith of Americans, do you think, as we approach this holiday season?
Well, no doubt about it. The economy, the war in Afghanistan, but also I just think the political divisions are a big deal, that the coarsening of our society, that we're demonizing differences. Those things need to be dealt with.
We think about Thanksgiving, we think about giving and being thankful for blessings. Mm-hmm. You have talked about giving in your own life. You've acted on giving. You give. Yeah. And you say that it's not a sin to be rich, but it's a sin to die rich.
I believe that. That's a personal conviction of mine. You know, thanks and giving go together. You can give without loving, but you cannot love without giving. You spell love, G-I-V-E. Probably the most famous verse in the Bible is John 3:16. God so loved the world that he gave his son. The Bible says every good gift comes from God. We're most like God when we're giving, when we're generous, because everything we have is a gift. And I've gone on this journey for many years. When Kay and I got married 35 years ago, we began the biblical practice of tithing, 10%. 10% we would give away to help other people. At the end of our first year, we raised it to 11%. At the end of our second year, raised it to 12%. At the end of our third year, raised it to 13%. And each year, now the Bible doesn't tell you to do this. We were just, every time I give, it breaks the grip of materialism in my life. My heart grows bigger. And on years that things were financially tight and we didn't have a lot of money, we'd still raise our giving maybe 1/4%. And then when I'd get a raise or something, we'd raise it 4 or 5%. Well, now, after 35 years, we actually give away 90% and live on 10. And I play this game with God where God says, Rick, you give to me and I'll give to you and we'll see who wins. I've lost it for 35 years.
But also in the Bible, in Deuteronomy, it says, do not harden your heart and shut your hand against your impoverished brother. But at a time of so much economic fear, of resentment, of anxiety, how do you encourage people to avoid hardening their heart?
Well, you can get compassion fatigue because you see it all the time, but it is always possible to give thanks by giving. You can see what God looks at is not the amount you give. He looks at the amount left over compared to what you give. And you know, even if you didn't have any money, you can give time, which is actually far more valuable. You can always get more money, but when you give your time, you're giving away your life. So it's possible to always give something. By the way, so when some people talk about giving, they stop at nothing.
All right.
Yeah.
We've seen that giving has, in 2008, charitable giving was down, but not to religious institutions. It was as strong as ever. Why?
Well, I think because faith communities teach the importance of generosity, that it's a godly quality. As I said, we're most like God when we're giving. The issue of God is love, as I said, is a matter of giving back, and I think it's just a spiritual discipline. If you don't have that spiritual discipline, it's pretty easy. By the way, it's not an accident. The word miser and miserable come from the same root word.
It's interesting. Rabbi Joseph Telushkin, in his book, A Code of Jewish Ethics, writes something that caught my eye. I'll put it on the screen here. We become good people not by thinking good thoughts, but by doing good deeds again and again. And it's the repetition of that. But how do you see a distinction between a lot of people who get caught up in giving where it may be that they're checking a box, they're sending in a check, but they're not emptying themselves, or they're not really giving a gift of their heart? Are there differences?
Well, I think there are different kinds of levels of giving. There is, at the shallowest level, is what I call the impulsive giving. And that is, I see a commercial and I give, or I see somebody on the street and I give, and it's just an emotional response. That's good. It's better than nothing. But moving from impulsive giving up to regular giving, where I make it a habit in my life, whether other people need it or my temple or church needs it or not, I'm giving for my own benefit to become generous. Then there's systematic giving, there's proportional giving, and then there's sacrificial giving, which is giving when you really can't afford it. And that is really the highest, giving yourself away when you can't afford it.
I want to end with something that I've thought a lot about in reading A Purpose-Driven Life, and it's something that comes from questions to ponder at the end of each chapter, which I think are
so you're reading Purpose-Driven Life. I would just like to recommend that to everybody watching.
and this is one of the questions to consider at the end of one of the early chapters. What would my family and friends say is the driving force of my life? What do I want to be? How should people approach that question?
Well, there was another well-known author who once said, the way you look at your life is imagine yourself at your funeral, sitting up in the balcony and hearing people talk about you, and think of what you'd like them to say about you, and then build your life that way. And I thought, well, that's good. That's definitely progress. But I think there's a better thing, and that is to look at your life and say, what do I want God to say about me when I die? Not other people, because ultimately it doesn't matter what other people said about you. What matters is what God said about you. And if I were to summarize my life, it is to know and love God, and as a Christian, of course, I believe Him through His Son Christ, to grow spiritually in maturity, to serve God with all my heart, and to share His love with the whole world. That brings honor to Him. So when I say I know and I love and I grow and I serve and I share, that's my life.
That's your purpose.
That's my purpose. And for other people to narrow their life down to simple sentences, I think it's a very helpful thing. It sure adds clarity, and it certainly relieves pressure.
What if you can identify what your purpose is, but you struggle with whether you're living up to that purpose? It's one thing to say, well, this is my purpose. Are you really?
Yeah, it's a good point. Well, studies have shown that probably 70% of Americans are in the wrong job. They're in a job that they hate, they're not wired to do. We believe that God actually shapes each individual for a purpose. That some are made to be oceanographers, and some are made to be reporters, and some are made to close deals, and some are made to be accountants, and some are made to teach school. And how do you know what you're shaped to do? Two things. It's fulfilling and you're fruitful. If you're good at it and you love doing it, you come alive. You don't have to be paid for what your purpose is. You'd do it even if you weren't paid. In fact, I'm not paid to do what I do, and I don't take a salary. And so I do it out of love. I'm wired to do this. And the reason why we all do have different shapes is so that God wanted everything in the world to get done. If we all like to do the same thing, there'd a lot get undone. And so the greatest things in life are not things. Never give your life for money, because your net worth and your self-worth are not the same thing. Your value and your valuables are not the same thing. And who you are is much more important than what you do. And if you can stop and look at your life and say, what do I love to do? What did God wire me to do? And what am I good at? And a lot of times you don't even know it, but other people say, you know what you're good at? Then that's the direction you need to head.